Hey, so today I want to cover the rest of the personality systems that I know, really, and I want to cover again what they are, um, what their uses are, I think, and just any interesting thoughts I might have about them. So I'm going to try to cover all of the rest of them in this video. So yeah, it might be long, but I also might just not spend that much time on each of them. I don't really have that much to say for a lot of them. Okay, so Jungian typologies. Okay, so first of all, we have MBTI, um, and then that in itself is a little bit nebulous. So let's say first we have 16 personalities. 16 personalities is basically it gives you a big five test in disguise, and then it spits out at one of 16 types at you, 32, I guess. And the problem with 16 personalities. And so let's just take the 16 personalities as the profiles in their own right? Um, the problem with 16 personalities is that one, your personality can kind of change and you can grow outside of that box a little bit. Um, and that and that's basically the biggest problem, because you can then you become a completely different type, which has completely different purpose and motivations and whatever, and you're just very different. And so that's the weakness of this like 16 box, 16 category model. So then we move on to, and so therefore I wouldn't recommend using it. I would just use Enneagram if you're looking for a bucket model. Um, Cognitive functions. So these are speculated mechanisms of cognition that have a corresponding personality. So I think it's highly questionable that the mechanism of cognition would translate to any noticeable difference in personality. I also think it's very difficult to self diagnose. You can't really look into your brain and see what exactly it is that you're doing. There's the fish and water problem, and then also just alongside that, they're very abstract. And it's like, in which scenarios and when exactly are you doing these things? It's very unclear, and again, there's only 8 of these functions. You could pick the one that you like the most, but then it's like this is where it gets a little bit weirdly scientific. So with Enneagram, you can just pick the type that resonates with you the most, and it's like, what defense am I using the most, or whatever. And it should be one of those, roughly speaking. And with cognitive functions, it's like, at least I find that the way that it's the speculation about how you think is pretty like hard and fast in a way. And I think it's just difficult to self identify. I think there's probably a fair amount of people who don't fall in those categories. When exactly you think like that, and on what psychological level, is it unconscious, is it conscious, is it pre-conscious, etc., it's a bit difficult to understand, not to mention that these definitions are just a bit like unclear. So if you're a TI lead, you enjoy categorizing things or, building logical frameworks, and it's like, what does that mean? Does that mean that like I have my own way of thinking about things? Does it mean that I always ask the same 5 questions when something comes up? It's just a bit hard. And then on top of that, and so I think if you want to look at cognitive functions in their own right, we'll get to that. But I think if you want to also use them for personality, then I think that's really dicey, and I wouldn't suggest doing that because it just doesn't really make sense that you would have a certain personality following um, cognitive function usage. Okay. Um, and then socionics is the same thing. It mixes the two of personality and cognitive orientation, um, but also with a million trillion special relationships and stuff that are supposed to hold up, which is just not. Okay. So cognitive typology. Most people who watch my videos would be in cognitive typology, so I don't really need to explain it, but I quickly said here it's a theory of cognition rather than personality. And that might actually be a little bit of a confusing one to some people. But Auburn himself also says that it's not a theory of personality, it's a theory of cognition, and that the two should not be conflated, which is something that I've always felt in agreement with. And so basically, what cognitive typology does, and what I think a lot of good personality systems should do, or not personality systems, but mechanisms of the psyche that if we're trying to extract some kind of feature or mechanism of the psyche, I think what should be done is you should basically zone in on one thing, and then it kind of has emergent properties that come from there. So what CT does is it speculates based on body language systematically what is going on in your brain, very generally, between PE, JE, JI, PI. And these will, in some ways, shape a person, but not very predictably. So you can say that a person with PI is probably more risk averse, but that's not always the case. You can say a person with PE is more explorative, but that might be in the mental realm, that might be in the physical realm. You can say a person with JE has good organizational skills, they still might choose to get nothing done. So really what we're focusing on here, first and foremost, and for me really kind of only in a way, though I still keep like some observations on the side, is just this proposed cognition. Then everything that comes after that is an emergent property. So it's something that becomes visible from something smaller, and that interacting with other things. So basically, the behavior, the archetype, and the psychology, the beliefs, all of these things follow from the core mechanism of cognition that CT speculates with some probability, not guaranteed. So given that, but I do think there are some kind of personality characteristics that kind of do hold, generally speaking, or at least it can bring them to light for you, and you can see whether they hold or not for yourself. So my assessment of cognitive typology is that it's somewhat useful to know. It highlights tendencies that we miss about ourselves, although what we can do with the knowledge is a bit questionable. So it could help you with picking the right career, for example. If you're a JI lead, odds are that you're meticulous, you want everything to be perfect, you don't like it when people are rushing things, and if you're forced to work quickly, you might make more mistakes. That can be useful knowledge for you to know if you're not already aware of this. And so that can help you pick a more useful career or a more useful environment for you to be in, something that meshes with you better. And I would say skip other Jungian typologies. As a PE lead, and I might say as a reviser in general, I like change. I don't like too much structure. I need mental stimulation as an NE lead, and so I can't do anything that's like too incredibly rigid and the same old. That's not really great for me. And as an NE lead, something I've really noticed is that I have a great need for mental stimulation, and so that's something that I should try to look for in a career or in life in general. And I should also be aware of the fact that what I want is going to change over time, generally speaking. And looking in the past, that does seem to be the case. So if I ever think, I found the one golden bullet, the one thing that I was destined for, I probably won't like it in a couple of years. However, one thing that is a bit of a constant about myself is that I keep changing and I update, and I need that mental stimulation. That's always been the case. And I'm also a very quantitative person. Say, So maybe I would want to go into a career that uses quantitative skills but can be used on many different domains or industries. And right now I'm in software, so that works pretty well. Okay. Um, AP. Okay, so AP is kind of interesting. I think this one's gonna be might take a little while. Um, the first thing I want to do is I want to distinguish between attitudinal psyche and psyche yoga. Okay, they are different systems, and much like CT, what AP does is it measures attitude. That's a mechanism that we're trying to extrapolate from our cognition, from our brain, from our personality, whatever. And that in itself does not give rise to a personality type. In Psyche Yoga, there's a couple things, or psychosophy. It's a lot bigger. It makes more assumptions about personality and how you operate, and there's like a mental energy hierarchy where you give most of your mental energy to your first aspect and then to your second, third, fourth. That's not the case with attitudinal psyche. Attitudinal psyche is literally just measuring your attitude. And I like it. I like AP. And so, what can I say about AP? What is attitude? Okay, so attitude is not what I'm giving you right now. It's how you respond to the four aspects of information. The four aspects of information are physics, that's practical stuff in the world, food, money, taxes, tasks, clothes. There's logic, that's, 1 plus 1 equals 2, math, I was going to say physics, that's very confusing. Academic subjects, theories, personality systems are a lot logic. Argumentation, knowledge. There's volition, which is a bit hard to define. It's like your energy around, or sorry, you're not energy. Your attitude towards goal setting, achievement, desire, just straight up desire, like just wanting things. Time management, competitiveness, spirit. These are volition. Volition is the hardest to define. Rob has a good quote about volition. He says, if you ever see something that doesn't make sense, like it just totally doesn't make any sense, volition's probably involved. Okay. And emotion. Emotion is obviously like about relationships and affect, your moods, imagination, creativity. Cool. So then it is, AP says that for each of these four aspects, you can feel positively or negatively about the aspect in yourself or in others. So it's a little much, but let's break that down. So if I have others' negative logic, that means I'm skeptical of your arguments. I don't think you're trustworthy. I am looking at you with a magnifying glass because I'm just not receptive towards other people's logic. That's others' negative logic. Others' positive logic would be like, I'm going to listen to what you have to say. I want to hear you out. I agree with the people who are in charge of logic, so science. And I don't really question them too much. And yeah, and then so that's the others. And then there's self. Self negative logic is like, I don't really think I understand this. I can't really come to a conclusion on this. I don't know how I would come to a conclusion on this. This is a bit overwhelming. I don't get it. I don't believe in my ability to get it. And then there's also self positive logic, which is like, I'm right. um, I'm right. I trust my ability to assess what's right and wrong. I can just see logic in things, no problem. So now we've explored what others positive, others negative, self negative, self positive. We've explored what all of these mean. Okay, so now the four positions essentially just are combinations of those. So in your first of four slots, you have something that is self positive and others negative. It's a bit selfish. You trust yourself and not other people. It's just you're quick about it. Don't really think about it too much. And it's just kind of an easy way to navigate the world. And the second slot is self-positive, others positive. This is called flexible, and the flexible position. And so with the flexible position, it's like, yeah, I could entertain that. I could also entertain this. I could entertain that. I'll hear you out. I'll also chip in myself. It's a fun area, and it might not actually be your most practical area per se, but it's something that you could definitely spend a lot of time on, and it's just fun for you. And something that's kind of interested in, you might be interested in other people. It's a bit unselfish. Others positive things are unselfish, and others negative are a bit more selfish. The third aspect, the insecure aspect, is others negative and self negative. This can cause problems. And if you ever notice yourself getting like really irrationally upset about something, it's probably your third aspect. It takes quite a lot to trigger your first aspect because you're very self positive about it, but your third aspect can get stepped on pretty easily. So I'm third logic. So if somebody says something that doesn't check out to me, not only is it like, I don't believe you, but it's also like, but I don't know what I think about it. So now I need to spend a bunch of time checking it and figuring out what I think about it and if that person's right or wrong, because like that's just how I react. AP is about reactions. It's about your attitude towards things and how you react to these things. So it's really most useful, I think, to know your AP type, at least in my experience, for your third aspect. Well, really, all the aspects can be useful. It's really important to know your third aspect because you can know when you're just wasting time on something and when you're getting tripped up on something that doesn't matter. So I can waste time rabbit holing on whatever because this person's wrong and there's like a stranger on the internet is wrong. And I can also waste time distracting myself when I'm trying to like look up something, say about programming, because I'm a software engineer, and then I notice that like their grammar is wrong or they said this instruction wrong, and I can just start getting really irritated because I'll start to get distrustful of this source of information, even though it's not really relevant and it's slowing me down from what I actually want to do. So, yeah, that's the third attitude. Fourth attitude is others positive and self negative. This is like, I don't care. I'm not good at this. You are. You can do it. Or whatever. Doesn't really matter. I'll go with the flow. It's not a big deal. And it's called the indifferent aspect because I think it's called indifferent. because you're indifferent. You know, you don't really care. It's not a big deal. It doesn't hurt you. It's something that really feels like it can't hurt you because it doesn't matter. And so sometimes actually these can be the fourth aspect can be a bit of a source of curiosity. It can be like, I don't get it, and other people seem to have the answers. Let me kind of like look into that, you know? And so Esther Perel, for example, is a very great relationship coach, very esteemed, and has written some great work on the subject of relationships and relationship coaching and all that. And she's fourth emotion. She's VLFE. That's because she's kind of a connoisseur of emotions. And she's like, emotions don't really come that naturally to me. I don't really get it. Let me try to figure it out, especially in a way that's logical because she has that 2L. And then she's kind of made of her expertise. She's one of you. So it's kind of interesting like that. I'm 4V, and so I actually know a lot about. I don't really care about my career and what it is. I don't feel passionate about anything. I have very few desires in life. I'm lazy, and at the same time, I'm also a connoisseur in volition because, and not all people with the fourth aspect will be a connoisseur. That's more if they have the accentuated subtype, but don't really need to dive into subtypes. But I actually am extremely resourceful on how to navigate the world of careers. I know what schooling you need for doing a bunch of different things. I know what kind of careers pay what. I know how to, get into the good companies and what that entails and all of these things. I know all the resources, and that's just because I'm open. I'm receptive to information about it because just naturally like, well, I don't necessarily know how to do that, and other people have the answers. Let me just go eat that shit up. And then I can also share it with other people. I can share what I've learned. And the fourth can actually kind of be like a secret power sometimes. Yeah, the second is something that wait, okay, sorry. Let me check my notes again here. So yeah, let's know what your triggers are. I would say it's good for self and close relationships. I would say attitudinal psyche type is not obvious, and unless you really look for it, and the way that you type an attitudinal psyche is you wait for the aspect to be talked about, and then you see what they do with it. So if you're dealing with someone who is like 4E and emotions come up, they're kind of going to be like, oh yeah, that's nice. And like, I have these people in my life and that's cool. But they're not really going to give you any of their own emotions. And they're going to be kind of a little bit like, yeah. 3E is going to be like, just hiding it completely. And a little bit dry. 2E is going to be like, oh, I want to know what you're doing, and here's what I'm doing, and how do you feel, and this is how I feel, and they'll really get up in your face. I think 45% of people or so are 2E. And then 1E is going to be a bit bratty, and it's going to be like, well, this is my opinion, and I'm speaking as a 1E, though my subtype is 0. I'm 1E0. So it's a little bit complicated there. But yeah, and they're just gonna drop their opinion, and kind of like I'm doing about personality in these videos. I don't really care. I mean, like this is just what I think about it. This is my opinion, and I feel like it's okay. I'm entitled to have my opinion, and I can be judgy about people because it's got that others negative aspect of emotions. So yeah. And so yeah, you're looking for, hopefully in those examples I kind of conveyed how one is others positive, self negative, one is others negative, self negative, one is both positive, and then one is others negative, self positive. And you just do that for all of the aspects. If somebody starts freezing up and taking a long time and being really specific, that's probably their third. Um, if somebody can spend a long time on a subject and they especially if they get excited, they light up about it. My wife is 2L, and she's like, she'll just go like, ooh, and put her teaching hat on whenever logic comes up. Um, and Yeah, so that's interesting. And one another thing that actually kind of sold me on the system. So I was typed as EFLV. This type is supposed to be kind of like the class clown, the joker, according to the personality descriptions. I've learned to kind of take the personality descriptions with a little bit of salt, maybe a fair amount of salt even. And actually, well, grain of salt originally means very little, actually. So it's kind of funny how we say like a lot of salt to mean not very seriously when originally it was the other way around. But I digress. So I got stuck on a logical detail there, kind of, because I was like, oh, well, I did say that right, but I want to clarify. And see, I was just expressing kind of my thoughts, my emotions there, with no hangups. If I was 3E, I would be questioning like, should I say that? Is that really relevant? Is that like, am I exposing myself? And 4E's just like, I don't give a fuck. They don't even think about that. Um, yeah. So where was I? Oh yeah. So kind of learned to take the personality profiles with a grain of salt. And then my wife's typing came back, and she's VLFE, which I think checks out totally. She's also 1V0. Um, so it doesn't fully line up, but it lines up quite a bit. And I definitely see that 1V inside her. And I also see the 1E inside myself, even if it's not super apparent. Um, and then, like, so that makes us duals, which means that our process, like our process functions. And oh, I haven't talked about results and process. Oh God, I should have done a whole video for attitudinal psyche. That's my bad. Maybe I'll edit it into one. So the first and fourth functions are results, and the middle two are process. Results. The reason why this is created is because if I don't trust you, and I do trust myself, that's the first aspect. What is there to discuss? It's done. And for the fourth, if I do trust you and I don't trust myself, again, what is there to talk about? The process, so it's called results because it's very fast. It's like, I know it or I don't. It's like, this is it. Let's just not waste much time on it. And so the results, and then the process functions are like, I trust you and I trust me. Oh, that's interesting. Let's get to the truth. And then the third is like, I don't trust you. I don't trust me. Where's the truth? And so both of these kind of call for further and further investigation. These things are kind of things that you're never really going to feel like are solved. So my wife and I were duals, and we have each other's process functions reversed. And so it's like she can feel negative and skeptical about F things, physics, and then I can be like, oh well, I know how to navigate this, no problem, and then like, we can go back and forth, and then same thing with logic. In her case, she's like, she'll hear me out. She has no problem hearing me out because she's super patient with logic because it's her second and it's a fun area. But then I can be all skeptical, but she'll still hear me out and help me with it. And so what happens in duality a lot of the time is that he'll talk forever. And so I saw that and I'm like, oh wow, that checks out. And also, actually, while we were waiting for my wife to get her type back, I noticed some examples of how I was pretty sure we had our process functions kind of switched, because I saw sometimes where like I just think something is so incredibly obvious, and um like for example, the example I have on hand is she wanted a Cadbury Cream Egg McFlurry. And we were at one McDonald's and they didn't have it. The other McDonald's is a 30-minute walk there and a 30-minute and like a 15-minute walk to the hotel we're staying at afterwards. So it's 45 minutes of energy expenditure to get a Cadbury Cream Egg McFlurry. And I'm like, babe, that's not worth it at all. Like, what? And then she's like, oh, I didn't really realize. Like, I can't really compute that, like, effort versus how long. She didn't really know how long it would take, and she didn't really know if that's, like, worth it. She's like, how do I compare 45 minutes of time versus having my perfect McFlurry? I'm like, this is clear as day. But she just kind of struggles to make these F comparisons. And so she can spend a lot of time working on interior decorating and stuff like that, and she can really get it down just perfect. But it takes her a long time. And same with me in logic. But I noticed that, and similarly, I can get really hung up on things that don't matter, or I can be overly precise about things, and she'll be like, it's just this. I'm like, oh, yeah, true. And just to be abundantly clear, my wife is very smart. But, things like McFlurry versus walking are just kind of not clear to her a lot of the time. And so then I come in and I'm like, well, this is like, no problem. And I've also had times in my life where this kind of 2F, something that I feel like is not really a big deal, doesn't really matter, doesn't require any skill from me, just kind of comes naturally. Like I can go in and say, oh, this part of the room should be moved over there. And then I've had people go like, oh my God, you're a genius. How you're so good at interior decorating. And I'm like, I've literally never done this in my life. It's just obvious. And yeah, there's kind of the power of attitudes there. Now, attitude does not equal skill per se. But yeah, just something, I don't know. I'm a little bit sidetracked, but Rob's really great at typing. It's going to be extremely difficult to type yourself. And if you're typing based off profiles, it's going to be even harder. I almost certainly would have typed myself as 1L if I was trying to type myself. I do have a 3L1 subtype, which is very others negative, which kind of drowns out my own self-negativity. But I can also see that it's clearly process-oriented because I spend a long time on it. And so I am actually 3L. Right, so let me continue reading. Yeah, knowing what your third, so it lets you know what your triggers are and where you might be a bit selfish, mean, or indifferent. Knowing what your third attitude is and when you're wasting time or getting too worked up about it can be quite useful. I.e., if you're 3L, you might notice when you're criticizing a logical mistake irrelevant to the true task at hand because it made you feel threatened. Kind of like, oh, this person made a typo here. Therefore, like, I'm going to get worked up and like, oh, does this person even know what they're talking about when the task at hand is totally different and has nothing to do with grammar and maybe they were just typing fast. Who cares? Doesn't mean that what I'm actually there for is wrong. Another interesting thing of note here is actually, I think with attitudinal psyche, another thing that comes is it's very deep again. You don't notice it unless you're looking for it, which kind of makes it sound like a bit of a not valuable typology, but it actually is pretty valuable and pretty insightful. And so another thing is there's the concept of a conflicting sexta, where everything that you're interested in talking about, your process-oriented functions, if they are the result functions of another sexta, because it's divided into 6 groups, there's 24 types, that's not really going to work out too well. Especially if it's set up so that your first is the other's third and your third is the other's first and second and fourth vice versa, because that is just bad. But in these cases where you're just conflicting sexta, opposite sexta, you're going to have nothing to talk about. And so if you've ever had people that you just have absolutely nothing to talk about, or maybe you feel like their emphasis is on the completely wrong things in life and they're just barking up the wrong tree, they might be conflicting sexta. An example I have is Richard Dawkins. He is my conflictor, and I have always felt, well, I kind of respect him, and he seems like a bright guy, but I feel that well, his idea that of why like God doesn't exist because there's no proof for it, and that people are being lied to, and people's lives are being kind of impoverished or something by these people selling the idea that God doesn't exist, but it's not scientifically verified. I find that to just be like, okay, even if that is true, and even if that is what you believe, why would you spend your whole life going around being angry at that? It sounds like the most ridiculous, mind-blowing thing to me. But I'm a Tria, and he's an Exi, and so they're more focused on people coming together and being motivated and having combined beliefs and ethics and values and working styles and coming together to build something nice. The Exes are pretty wholesome. The Trias just want to make money and buy nice clothes and new drugs and stuff. So I'm a Tria, my wife's a Tria, Elon Musk's a Tria, Joe Rogan's a Tria. All the cool people are Trias. And we make a lot of money, so we're very cool. Yep, I think that's basically about it for AP. Now I'm going to move on to Big Five. So I really don't have much to say about Big Five. Big Five. I like talking about AP. That was fun. Okay, so that was just a sharing my emotion for no reason. Big Five straight up tells you what your personality traits are and how you compare to others in an impersonal way. Doesn't give avenues for growth, but can help you pick situations/environments that are appropriate for your disposition. I.e., if you are agreeable, try a cooperative environment rather than a competitive one. So, yeah, Big Five, it's a descriptive... First of all, it's not a typology. It's a personality. It's a system of personality. So, the origins of Big Five are actually pretty cool. Basically, they're trying to figure out like how can we analyze personality, and I've actually kind of started from the same steps myself in a much less formal manner, and kind of derived with my wife. We were thinking like, okay, so if we had no personality systems, how would you describe someone? And what you'll come up with, what we came up with, is roughly Big Five. And then most people have one, maybe two, maybe three personality traits that really stand out among, and they will fall into Big Five. So, and there's a reason for this though. The reason why Big Five was created is because it was created from lexical analysis. So basically what they did was they looked up all the adjectives in the dictionary, anything that can be used to describe a person or a thing, and then they clustered them. They did a cluster analysis and they said, all right, let's divide this into a couple of different groups. And then they found that there were roughly 5 different groups. The groups were extroversion and introversion, agreeableness and disagreeableness, conscientiousness and laziness, I guess, neuroticism and being chill, and then openness to experience and being boring. So basically that came from the dictionary. And they said is, okay, so we have these 5 different dimensions of personality. Now for each, we'll give people like an assessment or whatever, and basically answer some questions, and every person should fall somewhere on the scale of like 0th percentile to 100th percentile, or what, first percentile to 99th. So it's relative to other people in the population. So if you're 50th percentile introversion, that means that half the people in the world are more introverted than you, half the people in the world are more extroverted than you. And it's really as simple as that. So it directly compares you to other people, no rarity games involved. And it also straight up tells you, and I mean, because inherently we are comparing humans to other humans, I think this makes the most sense, really. Like, to think about it this way. Because we can only say this person is rowdy if we compare to a group of people who are considered not rowdy or normal. So yeah, and so what I find actually, and I think there was actually a recent paper on this. They predicted profiles of people who would be more likely to go to the gym, and that was based on like conscientiousness and extroversion. And they created some profiles. So, like say if you're high in conscientiousness and low in extroversion, then you're like the silent worker. If you're high in extroversion and high in conscientiousness, then you're like, I don't know what they called it. And then if you're high in extroversion and low in conscientiousness, you're the party type. And so you can kind of create a lot of these different profiles. And this is roughly what me and my wife did whenever we recreated the Big Five kind of from scratch. Or we kind of tried to create a personality system from scratch. We kind of landed on this. I'm like, how would I describe myself? And I thought, okay, well, high in openness. And the big facet of openness there for me is I'm less so artistic and I'm much more intellectual. But that is a large, about half of openness. So say high in intellect or high in openness, and anything else, like probably not. I'm just high in openness. Maybe low in conscientiousness. I can be pretty disorganized, but not it's not 100% clear. And yeah, you can just go about in this fashion, and then you can kind of create profiles for people. But again, the thing here is that they're descriptive. They're not going to tell you what you should do, how you should improve yourself, who you really are, in a way, what you want. They're just going to tell you what you do, some things about you, and things about you that other people notice. So I do actually know that being high in openness, that means that I need to set aside time to be creative. So people who are very creative have a pull to create. And there's just, if they don't create, they get really depressed. That goes for me, but in intellect. So if I'm not working my brain, which is very easy to do, luckily, I'm not like looking things up and trying to piece things together, then I'm just going to like die. I can't not do that. Similarly, somebody who's high in conscientiousness may require a routine. Somebody who's low in conscientiousness might absolutely detest having a routine. Maybe they shouldn't. I don't know. But see, that's another thing. It's like it doesn't exactly tell you too much about what to do. I think it's kind of like CT in that way. It doesn't really tell you so much, but at least CT can tell you something that you might have missed about yourself. Whereas Big Five is more susceptible to lying to yourself, or having other people you've lied to not and haven't looked at you for long enough believe you. I'm starting to get tired. This is a very long video. Um, yeah, that's basically it for Big Five. I'm gonna go get some coffee. Bye.